next up on the Mom Magic Summit, Melanie Greenhall. I may have said her name wrong, but I'm going to say what she does correctly. She's the founder of the Collective Wisdom Coaching and Consulting. She's one of those women that really gets into the grief. She gets into the places that we don't always want to go as moms, as human beings. But so she did her signature TEDx talk on let's rethink our approach to grief and loss. So welcome all the way from Australia, ladies, from Australia, Melanie. I call her Mel. Welcome, 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 Melanie. What time is it in Australia before you get started?
Oh, it is 4:01 a.m.
Oh my gosh, and you're on our rehearsal at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, you are amazing. Bless you, and thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm going to leave here and give you the Mom Magic Summit stage. Go for it. You've got this.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Shelley. Well, a very early morning from Australia, but an absolute privilege to be in the company of such esteemed women, reading the book, which actually just arrived into the Southern Hemisphere yesterday. I had to, I was consuming it. It's really different. I read it, the e-version, but this one, having it in your hot little hands is something altogether different. So really, really interesting. I've loved listening to everybody. And my message today, so the chapter I wrote is called Showing Up As What Matters. So a little bit about my story is that, and I know that there'll be so many women that are watching and, will be able to relate in some way. So absolutely share and let me know if any of this really resonates with you. But I have what I call it, it's quite affectionate now, but it's called the Decade of Disaster. So, some of the headlines of that decade were that, my mum passed away in 2009, and after a cancer journey, and I was able to care for her and really experience that as a privilege. It was tough. It wasn't easy, but it was something that I absolutely live with no regrets about. I really wanted to be present with her, and it was an absolute honor. I then got really stuck in my grief. I came from a single parent family, and my mum was my world. She was my number one, ambassador, and I had just such a beautiful relationship with her. So I was really kind of a little bit lost. And I remember receiving a phone call in the early hours of the morning and learning that my 24-year-old sister had passed away, and her two children, who were very small at the time, instantly became my family. So, they were my nephews, and very quickly they became my sons. And I talk about that in the chapter, and it's really interesting because as I've moved through the decade, there was a lot of things that subsequently happened. Our house burnt down. I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. It was just, it was torturous, and I struggled. And I really want to put that out there in that, I really credit the reason that I'm here today. It's absolutely because of my children. So, there were some very, very dark moments, and I just had this little piece that just kept, it was hope, right? It was hope. And it was my community. And those were the things that kept me afloat. When the big tsunami, wave of grief would come and take me. And I just kept thinking, I have to be here for them. However, what I do want to really mention and highlight, because we can often get caught up in this idea that motherhood in particular is, I suppose, the benchmark is a Disney or a Hallmark version. And I want to let you know, for anybody out there that might be thinking, I'm not necessarily experiencing the sunshine. I'm not experienced. It's not all lollipops or roses. I want you to know that you're not alone. Yeah. So I had a really disrupted experience of motherhood. It began, you know, I loved it. I was enjoying it. It was great. And then obviously my life imploded. And what I found was that suddenly at times I was resentful. I found it really difficult to connect because I was so stuck in my own grief. And yet I was very much in autopilot. There's my cat stretching in the background. My God. So I was absolutely just consumed, and I completely left myself neglected. And, you know, in all honesty, what I was doing was swallowing, buffering, denying the grief. And, you know, I really do credit the level of stress I was experiencing to the illness that I subsequently went to experience. Yeah. So stress is an illness, and I definitely learned that the hard way. It was all a bit scary, but I at times felt very disconnected from motherhood. And what I, you know, have subsequently learned is that that's okay. I was able to get back in the game. You know, my work professionally is about working with people. I've always worked with vulnerable people, particularly those that had experienced extreme trauma. I know there's an irony in all of this, isn't there? And and people who were in recovery from mental illness. So I had always been the helper, and suddenly I was in the position where I needed to put my hand up and ask for help. And let me tell you, that is a skill for life. And it doesn't come easy to us. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that sometimes we need to break it down and in its simplest form, you know, really understand how is it that I can bring the community in, because people want to help. When my house burnt down, as an example, you know, and in the TEDx talk that I did, I make a bit of a joke about, we were like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do with all this lasagna? And you know, it was so much gratitude, but it was also like, where are all these people coming from? Who are these people, and how could I possibly take their help? And in the end, I really had to understand that what I was experiencing was bigger than me. It was bigger than myself and my family unit, and that I did need that help to be able to recover and rebuild. And so I took that graciously. And what I've now come to understand is that, you know, that's part of the human experience. It's inevitable that we will experience really difficult times. And at the core of the chapter, what I'm talking about is that every day, whether sometimes I wasn't capable of showing up for myself. So on those days, I woke up and I thought, who is it that I'm capable of showing up for today? Yes, that often was my children, but sometimes it was a friend that was waiting for me to have coffee with them. Sometimes it was going to my job at the time where I knew I would be able to do something and nobody could undo it. Does that sound familiar? Because my kids are a lot older now, so I know a lot of the other authors' children are still very young. And I remember those days being deep in the salt mine, and now I'm experiencing and enjoying them on a new level. And what I can actually give you a hot tip on is that all of the effort you're going to get them to pick things up off the floor, to put their cup in the dishwasher, and to brush their teeth twice a day will pay off. And I promise that if you're tired, you're doing it right. That's my advice. But what I really wanted to get across to you today is sort of two key messages. One is that it's never too late. So I'm 46. I started Collective Wisdom just as COVID was starting. That wasn't the best business plan I'd ever come up with, but I didn't pivot either. I actually took the time to step back, and I really loved what Jessica said about, really getting that vision, understanding what it was you wanted. And that's what COVID provided me. Yeah. So, but it's never too late. I am now completely aligned and feeling absolutely in my zone of divinity. Like this is, exactly where the professional and the personal, the nexus came together for me. I was able to take what I'd learned in my professional career over all of those years, and I was able to then connect it with the personal experience of, I now understand what the decade of disaster was about. The decade of disaster was about experiencing a huge variety of different loss. And what that is, it's a superpower. It's to understand that loss and the grief we experience isn't just about death and dying. It's about all of the things that we maybe didn't quite get to, we didn't achieve. It might be, as Dr. Shelley said, in the beginning, she was talking about divorce. It's a massive loss. It's a rupture in our lives, but they are things that we can, through the human experience and the development of our own resilience, we collect evidence as we move through life, right? And we're able to go, I know that I can overcome that. I can move through that. And it's not to say you ever get over these things, because I can tell you now, writing the chapter, two things. One, it was an incredibly emotional journey. And two, following it, I was extremely exhausted. And that's because on a cellular level, the losses that I've experienced over the years, they sit with me. And they are definitely a part of the fabric of who I am. But they've also helped form, I loved before when Carissa said, she was raised by a badass mum. Yeah, I think I might be able to take that title too. And I'm really proud of the children I've grown up. And I just love the idea that as women and as, mompreneurs, we have the ability to absolutely bring magic to the world and change the world one interaction at a time. So my message today is absolutely that you are not alone, and it is never too late. So if you're sitting on the fence and you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this, the reality is you can. You absolutely can. Take all the gifts that you've been given in life, and most of them come through some really hard times, and invest that in yourself. Absolutely. It's time to reclaim your space and make yourself a priority. Yeah. It's, not the time to be left neglected. I did that for a decade. And, now I've taken all those experiences, and I really, really hope that you enjoy the vulnerability that every single author has shared, and just know that it absolutely comes from a space of gratitude and wanting to lift each other up as we move through life. So thank you so much for having me. I hope you absolutely get to read the book, and we definitely want to hear from you, what you think about it, what touched your heart, what helped you, go, yep, I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to do it. So thanks so much for having me, Dr. Shelley. I've really appreciated it.
Absolutely, Melanie. This was fantastic. I can't believe you must be so tired all the way there in Australia, but thank you so much for being a part of this. And we welcome everyone to go ahead and get the book and read Melanie's story. It is powerful. It's very impactful. Thank you, Melanie.